So glad that you all have joined Keller. We are going to be talking, this is Ignite 9, Make and Receive Offers. And I wanted to let you know that making and receiving offers actually, for me, begins when you meet your client, because you've got to get them prepared. I am a more of a buyer's agent than I am a listing agent. I'm trying to stretch over to the other side, but I really feel more comfortable with buyers. So again, the making and receiving offers actually starts at the very, very beginning. So I'm going to start, I was going to start with the sellers first and then go to buyers, but I think I'm going to go ease into it the other way, go the other way. When you first get started, you want to have your buyer's consult with your buyers. I mean, before you even start showing them properties, have your buyer's consult, get them pre-approved. And then once you go over the process, then everything will fall into place. They're going to forget, I'm telling you right now, they're going to forget everything that you've told them during your buyer's consult. You're going to have to remind them over and over again. I usually tell them, give the buyer's consult, give it to them in writing, and then drip on them during the entire process, because they're going to forget. But once they get excited, once they get to the point where they're showing property, you're showing them property, that's when, they're really going to be glossed over. So that's why I say getting them prepared is going to be the very first step. Again, once we're writing this offer, you really want to make sure that they understand the contract. Have any of you all taken any of Brad's classes on the contract? Well, if
yes, ma'am.
Well, if you haven't, I strongly suggest that you take his class. The contract changes all the time. The last change was in 2020. They made a few little changes, but you will want to familiarize yourself with the entire contract when you get it, because you want to be able to explain all of it. You don't necessarily, there's two schools of thoughts of going over the entire contract page by page and then just giving it to them and say, here you go. I do both, and it depends on the client. I give them a copy of the contract during the buyer's consult and tell them, you can, say, hey, I want you to look at the contract and go through it and highlight the parts that you don't understand. And I jokingly laugh and say, I've been doing this for years. I've only had one client that actually read it. So if you read it, you'll be the second person to actually read this contract. But having them to have some understanding of the contract before you write it is key. Also, the same thing with the seller. You want to go over that contract before you get an offer in, because once everybody's all excited about the about the offer, things get a little hairy and you want them to be clear, and you're going to be the one that's going to give them that clarity. I just had an agent say something about, she told this agent that she was new and she made her feel like she was brand new. Well, even though you all may not have been in the business very long, one of the things that I want to stress to you is you have over 200 agents to back you. You have no excuse. You can call me, you can call anybody in our brokerage, and that they will help you. Connect with somebody, especially you newer agents, whether you get on a team or not, connect with somebody, or reach out to our ALC to make sure that you are connecting with somebody that's going to help guide you, because you're going to get nervous, and that's okay. Other than lying, cheating, and stealing, there's nothing that we cannot fix and can't, repair or get you through. Um, and at some point you're going to be in the position where I have done it for years and be teaching. And I encourage you, if there's something that you're not good at, teach a class. Even if it's something like doing a Zoom class to your potential buyers and sellers and going over this information. Do any of you all do buyer consults by Zoom yet? And I hear crickets. Well, if you haven't done that, I strongly suggest you do a buyer's consult and you do a seller's consult before and practice on each other. You can call me up. Let's practice, because sometimes, matter of fact, a lot of times when I'm practicing with another agent, and it doesn't matter how long they've been in the business, I learned something. So that might be something you may want to go ahead and start practicing with each other. I know in this environment with COVID, you may not want to see each other face to face, and that's why I suggest Zoom. If you don't have a Zoom account, it's really easy to get, and it's free. Okay. I am going to start sharing my screen because I've got, okay. Okay. Once we get, I still think I'm going to start with buyers first. Like I said, that's my comfort zone. Once we get an offer, once you're making an offer, like I said, you want to go over the entire contract with them when you're making an offer. Give them a copy of the contract and ask those questions. What are their important things? What's important to them? Do they have that conversation with the lender? Do they specifically need to have closing costs? Practically all of my clients need to have closing costs paid for them. So that's something that I talk to them about. If you're looking at a house that's 150,000 and you need 5,000 in closing costs, well, you may want to look at a less expensive house, because you're going to have to go in at full price, and we're still going to have to ask the seller for closing costs and prepaids. Let me see if I can pull up. I need to pull up a contract. And I apologize because I had all this other stuff, and then I thought I need to get this in here too. So bear with me. And you all might as well get unmuted, because I will call on you. Okay. Don't let all this stuff scare you. This is some of the stuff that I go over with my clients. Can everyone see that? All the stuff that I go over with my clients during the process and before. I also give them a copy of their inspection, a list of inspectors. Okay, I am not seeing a copy of the contract here. Okay, because I usually go into dot loop when I'm looking at that. Okay, do you all have a copy of the contract with you in front of you? Because I'm not finding it without getting out and going into dot loop. Here. You know what? I know what I can do. This is an old one. Okay. Okay. Yay, come on, come on. Yes, I got a contract. Sorry about that, folks. Okay, and this is a real contract that I'm actually working now, so you can't get more live than this. Once you get, once you're about to write an offer and you're making this offer, like I said, you want to go over the entire contract, and I'm not going to go over the entire contract with you all because that's a contract class, but some of the key things that you want to key in on is making sure that the address and everything is correct. If you use Transaction Desk, it automatically populates this information. One of the key things with buyers and sellers is the personal property that is involved. I tell buyers and sellers if it's nailed, glued, screwed in to the property, it goes with the property. You want to have that conversation with the buyers when they go in. Most lenders will not want you to include a lot of personal properties. I know I live in a farming community, so tractors and farming equipment is really big that people want to put into contracts. You want to put that on a separate addendum, that not a copy of this contract that the lender won't see, because you don't want that to become a part of the sales price of the contract that the lender is going to be privy to. When you're going into the house, you want to mark all the things that are in the house, because the refrigerator, stove, dishwasher, those things may not stay. And you want to make sure of that with your buyers when you're that they still, if they even want them. Sometimes they don't want those things. If there's personal items that need to be removed, you want to go ahead and have that conversation with your buyers when you're getting ready to write your offer, because you don't want, if there's a big, okay, I'm trying to say something. If there's a big pot belly stove that is just sitting in the basement of the house and the buyer doesn't want that in there, you want them to remove that, okay? This is the key part of why you do not need to show property to buyers until you know this information. You want to know what the price is. You want to go ahead and prepare them for the earnest money. I usually don't get this until we're about to write an offer, but nowadays I'm going ahead and getting that as quickly as I can to get them more engaged in the process. Because if you've got looky-loos, people that are tire kickers, they're going to, if they have to give up $500 or $1,000 or whatever it is, you're not, if they've got the money, you might as well go ahead and get it now. I like for my buyers to already have at least $1,500 before we make an offer, before we start looking. And because you're going to need at least $500 for the earnest money. You're going to need at least $500 for inspections. You're going to need at least $500 for the appraisal. So if they don't have that much money right up front, why are you starting? Because that's money that they're going to have right up front. So when we write this offer, you want it to be as smooth as possible. You're going to need to know the terms, what type of loan they're getting. So of course you want to make sure that they're pre-approved, and that that they know what type of loan. Ask your buyers what type of loan they're going to get, because if they're getting if they don't know that they're getting a USDA loan and that they don't have to have 3.5% down, That's big to them. And you need to know that as well. Plus, again, you need to know how much in closing costs. Okay. You're going to go over who holds the earnest money. I always hold the earnest money, especially when I'm working with the buyers, because I want to have control over it. Plus, I'm a control freak like that. The appraisal. You want them to know about that this house is contingent upon the appraisal. This is a cash deal, so of course that wasn't a biggie. One of the things that you want to also ask beforehand and give them information on this is whether they want to get it a home warranty. I personally love having a home warranty for my buyers. It's sort of a protection for them. It's a little bit of peace of mind. It'll keep you from getting some of them crazy phone calls after the deal is done, that if they've got somebody that they can call when the hot water heater goes out, that they can call somebody, especially first-time home buyers. They're a little bit nervous. I've even had one panic because they said their dishwasher wouldn't turn on and they didn't know that they had to flip a switch. So that's, important when you're explaining to them, when you're writing an offer for them to include that home warranty, and you can give them options. I personally like residential home warranty. I've been using them for probably a couple of years. I used to use another company for about 15 years and they sort of got a little wonky when they changed management. So I recently changed. You want to go over the disclosures with them and point out anything that might be an issue for them. I give your buyers a copy of that disclosure before you write an offer. Go over it with them, because there's going to be great information on there, and you may even want to talk to the listing agent to go over those items just to make sure that there hadn't been something that may have changed, especially if a house has went under contract, and you want to see that. If the house has gone under contract and for some reason it didn't close, you want to know why. And it could be that there was something that they couldn't resolve during the inspection period and the seller refused to do. Well, guess what? Now that information is material fact. Oh, my video. So they're now having to disclose that information. And sometimes listing agents don't update the property disclosures. Inspections, that you want to make sure that your buyers and your sellers understand that inspection period. I am a stickler for this inspection period because earlier in my career, this was something that I got dinged on, that being a rookie, I did not measure the house, and the house was, there was a 10% variance in the square footage that I put in the listing versus what it actually was. So now you want to verify the square footage, whether you include language in there that says, I'm going to have the appraisal to verify the square footage, or however you want to do it, but you want to make sure that you're verifying the square footage. Like I said, don't make my mistake on that.
Give yourself I have a quick time. Question. Can I interrupt you one second?
I'm sorry, I'm just rolling.
No, you're doing a great job. It's Shelley, by the way. So I know that Brad's been talking a lot about that topic, appraisals and verifying the square footage. Do you have to ask the appraiser to do that, or is that something that he or she does automatically?
He or she does automatically. They will automatically do, it's part of the appraisal is to measure the house.
Okay.
And they're going to give a sketch of that house. Okay. So that's one reason why, that is probably the one thing in real estate that I hate to do, and that's measure the house. But it's probably because I got dinged on it. So now I measure the house, especially if if I'm in a house that is questionable. I recently had a buyer that was a VA buyer. Ooh, the lighting is awful. I had a VA buyer, and one of the rooms, it sort of felt cramped, and it was, and in one area of the room, I could actually touch the ceiling. So, and the buyer was interested in it, and I thought, you know what, we need to go back to that house. I need to measure that house, and especially that one room where I could touch the ceiling.
Yeah, they're
well,
like paddle boats, like kayaks.
Pardon me?
Sorry.
What was the, oh, okay. So come to find out, there was an entire bedroom that was not conforming. So that was like, oh gosh, a 9x9 room that we could not count in the square footage. And I knew that VA was going to have an issue with that when, they measure the house. The listing agent would not acknowledge that it was not part of the heated square foot, because an appraiser is going to look at I think it's 7 feet. It can't be under 7 feet. And this room was literally 6 feet, 6 feet and some inches. So, you definitely want to check on that. If anything seems funky, it is worth going out there again and checking it out. When you make this offer and you're doing inspections, give yourself some time. Usually inspectors can get out there in enough time, but there's a trick to the trade that I stole from another agent, where it says 7 days. By the way, this contract is based on calendar days. So weekends are included in those, like in this case, 7 days. But I changed the language on this particular section to say that it's business days. That way you don't have to worry about the weekends, and it gives you a little bit of time. Most listing agents are going to miss them, and they're going to be knocking on your door or calling you up. Hey, you missed your inspection period. But then I think I put it on this one, or maybe I didn't.
Hey, Marcia, I don't know about everybody else, but I can't see your contract. It looks like your screen's frozen.
Yeah, that's the same for me. I was just wondering, I just see that it's frozen on when you were trying to open that file, and that's all I see.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry, folks. I don't know how to change that. Let me stop and see if I can go out again. So has it been frozen all this time?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
shoot.
If you have a paper contract, maybe you can hold it up.
Oh, that I can do.
Technology's not always my friend either.
Okay, well, yay. All righty. Well, hold on then. I'll get a blank one instead of a real one. That way it won't have all the writing on it. And by the way, I will share all of my stuff because I've been perfecting it. I've been changing it. And at some point, you're going to be doing that too, getting tidbits of information from a lot of different people. But like I said, find something that works for you. Okay. We were on inspection, the inspection portion. Okay. if you got a contract, it is line 172, which by the way, I never hardly ever use line 168, which is the first one where the seller fails to disclose material facts which are known or unknown, and the buyer accepts the property in its as-is condition. I always give the buyer an out if the property doesn't suit them after they've gotten an inspection. But as far as the inspection period, again, I put in there the contract in regards to the inspection period. That is going to be 10 or 7 business days. So it doesn't include. And then of course I put 3 days for the seller to respond, 3 days for the buyer to respond, and 1 day if we're going back and forth for one person to say, okay, we're done. This is it. You got 1 day to either accept this or not. The next section is talking about the survey. I'm telling you, most buyers don't want to spend the extra money to get a survey done. But if there's any question in your mind about the where the property begins and ends, it is worth that buyer's money to get a survey. If you can get one from the seller, that is perfect. But not every seller has a survey because of course they didn't get one when they bought the house. But especially when you're talking about farmland, if you've got acreage, it may not be the fence line, or even if in a subdivision, it may not be the fence line, or the fence may be on someone else's property line. Or when I bought my first house, 2 feet of my neighbor's driveway actually belonged to me. So you want to get those things resolved, because in my case, it became an issue when I got ready to sell my house, and I had to give my neighbor access to that piece of land that was actually mine, but he was using it for 2 feet of his driveway. It can be costly, especially when you're considering farmland, but like I said, if you're someone that's buying a piece of property, you want to know where your property ends and begins. When it comes to closing date and time, I used to give 30 to 45 days. And I have learned through the years that the seller thinks it's the 45 days, the buyer thinks it's the 30 days, and the lender, they're somewhere in the middle. So what I've been doing going forward is I put a hard date. That seems to be working for me, because everybody will go look to that hard date as the date we're closing. You can count out the 45 days, you can count out the 60 days, but it's interesting. A seller that says, well, I need to close in 30 days, but when you count it out and put a hard date, they don't even count it. They don't even check it. So, and talk with your lender to find out how much time this buyer is going to need to do this deal, because some loans are a little bit different. The one that I showed you earlier, we actually wrote that contract in August. We still haven't closed. And it looks like it's going to be in December before we close. Who knew that? I mean, we're on our second extension. The agent has decided, hey, just write another contract. But that's the way this particular short sale is going. If you're going USDA direct, and there are 2 of them, people, because I know people get them mixed up. USDA direct is 120 days. US guaranteed, which is the one that you're probably more used to, is that can be a regular 30 to 45 day closing. But you want to get an idea of when you want to close. And on the flip side, ask the seller, when, we got this contract, when is a good time that you want to be out of your house? Another section that tends to be a stickler is possession. When I'm representing the buyer, my buyers get the keys at the time of closing. That's what I want. I'm fighting for it. And if the seller insists on that, then I'm going to give them a delayed possession document that states that, oh yeah, you can stay in the house for 2 or 3 days, but it's going to cost you X number of dollars, or put in terms in there that may not be as favorable. That, like, they have to have the house professionally cleaned before when you move out, or I need you to, to keep $150 for cleaning purposes, or you need to keep insurance on the property while you have possession of it. Those types of things. Now, in some cases, some buyers agents or the buyers say, that's fine. That's fine if they stay in there a couple of days. But have that conversation with your buyer and let them be your guide, because there's no need in you fighting and they're okay with it. But, when they do say, oh, it's okay if they stay in the house, then, remind them that that is their house, that their insurance is going to be kicking in, and to let them know. Now, there are exceptions to the rules, because when I bought the house that I'm in now, I stayed in my old house for 21 days after closing. That is rare, folks. That is real rare. But have that conversation with your buyer if they want to have immediate possession, and if that's important to them. Make sure you do a walkthrough. Another piece of information that I put in my contracts is that we're going to do a walkthrough 3 days prior to closing, and we're going to do a walkthrough the day of closing or the day before closing. This has been invaluable to me, because it gives me time, and the buyers and the sellers time, because if there's a conflict, if there's something that they were supposed to do that they did not do, or it wasn't done to my buyer's standards, then it gives us time to look at it and say, hey, you were supposed to, put down new flooring in this room and it's not done yet. Or, this electrical that was supposed to be done, I got an invoice, but the invoice, oh, I know it. There was one house that I had that they had inspection done. The inspector went out. They were supposed to do everything. And when we walked in to do our walkthrough, there were several of the electrical outlets that did not have the switch plates still. And the electrician just simply missed it. Even though we noted it in the inspection report, we showed them pictures. It just didn't, they missed it. So if we hadn't have seen that, we wouldn't have caught it. So again, you want to have your walkthrough 3 or 4 days before closing. So if something does come up, you've got an opportunity to catch it and have the seller to fix it.
Marcia,
Do they
I
have to
another
allow
question.
you to do a walkthrough?
Huh? Do they have to allow you to do a walkthrough?
Yes.
Yes. It's in the contract, number 212. The buyer shall have the right to perform a walkthrough inspection prior to closing, and again prior to delivery of possession, to verify condition. And this paragraph shall survive the closing. That section right there, the words, this paragraph shall survive the closing, that's what changed in this contract this year, because they have added that statement in key points in the contract. Is there any other questions? Because I'll keep rolling now. I don't know if you all have done the personality disc personality thing? Well, I'm a high I, so I can keep rolling until you stop me. So those people that are detail oriented, you're going to have to raise your hand, cough, unmute yourself, do something, because otherwise I will just keep on rolling.
Hey, Marcia, it's Shelley. I have another question. So in that paragraph where it says you do the inspection or the walkthrough, and then you can do another walkthrough, do you have to write that out anywhere else? Like, do you have to put it like in other provisions that you're going to do two walkthroughs?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope, you don't, because it says right here in the contract that you can do a walkthrough prior to closing, and again, prior to
At
closing
possession.
and prior to delivery. So
Okay.
that's already saying it twice.
Okay, great. Because
But
I've never done that, and that's a pretty cool idea. So I like that. I think I'm going to steal it.
help yourself.
The double walkthrough I've never done, so it's a good idea.
Yeah. And I just put it in because it was something that Harry brought up at a meeting one time, and I thought, okay, I'm going to add that. Let's see. Yeah.
Hey, Marcia, this is Danita.
Hello, Danita.
Hello. And so when you do that, you don't write in 3 days so they'll have like advance notice that you want to do it that third day before closing?
Yes, I put it in the section number 27 under other provisions. And if I can share my screen, I'm going to show you where I put that in there. Because there is snippets of information that I always put in contracts, and I am going to see if I can get to it. So help me God. And hopefully this part will share, and it doesn't matter if it freezes. Okay, because it will be stagnant. Okay, does everybody see that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, this is standard language that I put in every one of my contracts. Seller to pay closing
I don't
costs.
see it. I just
Don't
see where
see it?
I just see where you clicked it open in the file, and then it's stuck on the file screen. Like, I can just see all of your files that were in that folder.
Agreed.
Okay. Okay. Now do you see it?
Yes.
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 Yeah.
I don't know how
It's
okay. So you all see all the language that I
frozen
put in
on
contract.
where you clicked on contract. It's just frozen.
Okay, it's still frozen?
I can see it now. It's not frozen on my screen anymore. I see your document.
I
Okay.
also see your document, seller to pay $2,500 towards closing cost.
That's it. Okay, that's language that I automatically put into my contracts every single time. Whatever the amount is my seller, that my buyer needs, I put that in there. The appraisal to verify the square footage. The buyer shall have 10 business days to complete inspections. And I don't know if you all, who you use as your closing attorneys, but I use either Borders and Borders if it's in Louisville, and I use Hayes Law Office if it's in Shelby County. And this is where I put the buyer has the right to do a walkthrough 3 days prior to closing, and again prior to closing, and all provisions of this contract shall survive the contract, which is redundant because it's already saying that in the contract, but sometimes people miss that. So that's why I put it in there.
So you put that last paragraph in other provisions.
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, I literally cut and paste this whole paragraph and put it in my contracts. And then,
Perfect.
of course, I cut out whichever attorney I'm using.
Oh, okay.
The
So
next,
here's where you say 10 business days to complete the transaction. I thought in the inspections, you just added the word business days because it has a blank. They'll be completed in blank days. So you add it here.
I added there because it's not going to give you enough room to put 10 business days.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this.
Oh, no problem. But that gives you 10 actual business days, and it doesn't count the weekends. Because I mean, if you write the contract on Thursday and then the contract starts on that Friday, then you've already eaten up 2 days with Saturday and Sunday. I just put in, you've got 10 business days. And to cover you with the verification of the square footage, that's where I put the appraisal.
Can I chime in real quick?
Sure.
Just something that I've learned within the last couple months. Your time of inspection, those 10 days, that is not just the home inspection.
That's
That
everything.
time of inspection means if the home inspector recommends for the HVAC to be inspected or the roof to be inspected, then whatever amount of days that we've written into the contract, all inspections have to be done within that time frame. So if the home inspection is done, and then you still need to get an HVAC and a roof or a foundation, all inspections have to be done, need to be done. And the other thing I learned was the radon. If you do a radon test, there's a delay in getting the response. Before you make a decision about walking away or writing the repairs, you need to have all of your results in front of you, because once you do the repair request, you've gone down that road of I think, Marcia, you do the 331. But this is like a pivotal point, because if all these inspection reports come back and they're bad, you don't want to do a repair request. That's that opportunity where you can void the contract legally.
Yes.
But once we make a repair request, we're committed down that path. So all inspections, all reports, all that has to be done in that inspection window, unless you ask for an extension and get an extension in writing. So just keep that in mind. I sort of learned that was one of my bumps within the last 2 months.
And can I piggyback off what Mike was saying? So
Yes.
I had a really hard time getting a termite inspection in E-Town. Like, these people just wouldn't call my client back. It was on the very last day of the 10-day window that we got the termite inspection and got it scheduled. It actually happened after the fact. There were termites in a shed, not the main house, luckily. But because we were outside of that 10-day window, out of luck, getting that termite damage fixed or mitigated. So and he's exactly right. So keep that in mind, y'all. That 10 days is for everything, all of it.
And that is why when you have your buyer's consult, you get a list of those inspectors in their hands, and tell them, when we write an offer, I tell my clients, you got 24 hours to set up that inspection. Because you do not want, and that's why you want to make sure they have the money to pay for that inspection right up front, because that is an expense that's going to come out real quick, right after them giving you that $500 or $1,000 check for the earnest money. So yes, definitely have them get that inspection done, and tell them it is their responsibility. That you can give them a list of inspectors, but you can't pick out the inspector for them, and ask them what type of inspections they're going to get. And you all have it's in your packet, professional recommendations to the purchaser. Make sure when you have them sign the contract, you have them to fill that out too and sign that, because that's going to give them all the inspections that they can get, another bump in the road. If there is a septic tank, that's another inspection. That's a different inspection. So propane tank, cisterns, wells, chimney, mold,
Swimming pool,
swimming pool,
in-ground swimming pool. Yeah.
in-ground swimming pool. So if
I have
you
a
know,
question.
sure.
Do you do radon tests on undeveloped land?
I have not. I have not.
Okay.
What's your situation?
My buyers are looking for land to put their manufactured home on. And since radon was mentioned in this group, I know to suggest a radon test with houses already on the land, but if nothing is on the land, I don't know if it's recommended to have a radon test or not.
You know what? That is a good question. Who is your inspectors?
We haven't found any land yet, so.
Okay, well,
Mhm.
I don't think you would do it prior. I don't
Okay.
think you would do it prior, but that is a question I would ask your inspector what they
Okay.
recommend, and I would talk to 2 or 3 inspectors about that. But I would think you would not do that without the house being on there, because I mean, what's the point? I mean, because you don't know if they're building a house with a basement.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's a manufactured home, you don't have a basement, you're going to be on top of the ground. I can't answer that question.
Okay. I'll
But
ask someone who's.
But your inspector would be able to answer that question.
Yeah, I'll ask them. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions while we're at this point? Because inspections are going to be big, because that is one at one point where the buyer and the seller can terminate a contract. And I hope you don't have commission breath and have counted your commission, which, by the way, I'm going to segue into that. Don't count your commission. Don't do it. It's bad luck. It has always been bad luck. It will continue to be bad luck. If you're focusing on the buyer and the seller, you won't have a problem. Well, you're going to have problems, but it won't be that. You're going to be doing other things. So please don't count the commission. Title insurance. The attorney's going to do a title search to make sure that there's nothing going on. And these days, they're doing a search on the buyers, which they never really did, or if things are coming up weird right now. I've been noticing if there is something that the buyer has not paid, like a tax lien or something on their record like that, and it doesn't maybe not show up on their credit report, they may have to take care of that prior to closing. So, you may want to let them know that, they're going to do a title search and to make sure that you're clean, and, that you're clean. And I tell my clients this too, that when you're buying a house afterward, you're going to be as clean as you can possibly be financially after buying a house, because you're going to be fully investigated. And of course that may make them go, oh, they're going to know my business. Well, guess what? You're getting ready to borrow thousands of dollars. So of course they're going to know who you are. And you would want to know who you are too, if you're going to let someone borrow thousands and thousands of dollars and pay it off over a 30-year period. I do highly recommend owner's title insurance, that they don't waive that opportunity, because think of it this way. If there is a title defect and the lender is going to get title insurance for them that covers them, but the buyer's owner's policy covers the buyer, you want them to have that. You don't want them to skip on that. Let's see. I think that's all I'm going to say about that part. Mediation and arbitration. Okay, as far as giving them time, does anyone have any questions about the other part, the smoke detectors, condominium, certification, risk of loss? I just normally tell them that, if the house burns down to the ground before you buy it, you can still buy the house and just collect their insurance maybe, or you can walk away and get your earnest money back. Oh,
Marcia, question.
sure.
Just, do you have any experience or insight? I know what I've heard through the ethics class and a little bit of experience, but I wanted to ask for you. Had a buyer who was inquiring about, can you negotiate down the commission rates in order to get a lower price? Again, I know the classes and I know what I've experienced, but I'm just curious if you've had any experience with that.
I am so thankful that you asked that question. Okay, I'm getting ready to get real serious. And I have this in the buyer's consult, and the seller's consult. My commission is my commission. It's not it is not something that is negotiated on in this contract. My commission is not even it's not even well, they do talk about commission, but it's not negotiable. I did have an agent, which you're going to have this. I mean, in 25 years, this is the worst agent I've ever worked with. And he wanted to, my buyers asked for closing costs and prepaids, and he wanted to reduce the sales price by that, and so that he could have the commission based on the reduced sales price because the seller had to come out of pocket with closing costs. And the answer is no. I do not. If you can't afford the house, I'm willing to walk away. And when a buyer and a seller know that you're not going to negotiate your commission, it sends a signal that that you're going to be strong enough to negotiate for them on their behalf. If the buyer is looking at houses that they can't afford, that's really your fault. You should be making sure that they are able to afford every house that you show them. And I tell them that every house that I show you, you're going to be able to afford. And if you even think about going up in that price, the first thing you're going to have to do is talk to your lender. Now, granted, I'm going to talk to their lender beforehand to see just how high they can go. But once they've talked to the lender and say, well, I want a house payment of this, and then they start going up, I'm going to stop them right then and there. As a matter of fact, I did it last night. This client was looking at houses that was 215, and they can't go over 200. And I asked him, why are we looking at this house? I said, because you're going over $15,000 and you still got to ask for $7,000 in closing costs. And they'll, they look at you crazy. But one of the things I have in my buyer's consult is that I will happily show you houses that you cannot afford, that you do not qualify for, and that is above your price range. I will happily do that. The cost of doing that is $50 payable in cash before my tire even moves. You want to pay it? Okay. That, putting that, and I need to get to my important things too, because that's something, like I said, when I go over my buyer's consult, I don't have that issue. And sometimes you do have to remind them that, you know what, you're going over your price point. Are you willing to make that extra $200 house payment? And of course they'll say no. I said, well then, there's no reason for us to see it. So the answer to that question is no, I do not negotiate my commission. Now there have been, go ahead.
No, I appreciate that. I know one of the things Brad taught us, and I've also heard over at GLAR, is the commission rate is set at listing.
Yeah.
And commission is not a part of the sales contract, but it can be awkward. It can be awkward when our clients want to try and figure out how to bid low or how to negotiate a little bit of a better deal. A matter of fact, even an agent on the other side of Kentucky, they recommended that to one of my clients about negotiating down the commission rate. And so again, just realize that, according to Brad, according to GLAR, the commission rate is set at listing, and it is not a part of the sales contract. And it's a dead thing, but it does happen.
Oh, it does. And everybody's going to try, but no is a complete sentence. And another thing, like I said, in my buyer's consult, and when I do my buyer's agency agreement, where it's where you put in what your minimum is. I know that a lot of new agents are using what's in the packet for their buyer's agency agreement. I tend to like the one that GLAR has, because I put in there that my commission is 3%. And I put in the comments section that if my commission is less, if the commission is less than my minimum, which is 3%, then the buyer will first ask the seller to pay that difference. And if the seller refuses to pay that difference, the buyer is responsible for that amount. So if I'm showing a property, and matter of fact, I'm showing one today, and it's 2.5%, then I don't say, well, we're not going to see this house. I show them the house and I let them make the decision. If this is one of those houses that is the commission is 2.5% instead of my minimum, which is 3%, then I'll say, by the way, this house, the commission is only 2.5%. So you would be responsible for the other 0.5%, the 0.5%. And usually it's really a small amount. And you can decide as an agent whether you're okay with that. Sometimes if I'm okay with that, I'll say, well, the commission is a 0.5% less than what my minimum is. But if you give me 3 leads, I'm okay with it. And usually they end up not even buying the house. That's why I said, don't have commission breath, because it always comes out. It always does. So, if the seller is not willing to pay that 0.5%, you can ask for it in closing costs, add it to the closing costs and prepaids, so that when you charge it to the to the buyer, that is part of it. You will have to find out if the loan type will allow it. And if the loan type doesn't allow it, then you just lost 0.5%. But, we're not talking about a bunch of money. Well, in my price point, we're not talking about a bunch of money. So it's never been an issue. So, all righty. The next biggest thing on this contract, let's see, let me make sure I don't want to miss anything. Talked about the commission. Notices, everything has to be in writing. Don't play. Do not play. Make sure that anything that you have, that you discuss, is in writing and that they acknowledge it. For some reason, a seller wanted the entire inspection report. My buyers decided to terminate the contract, and the seller wanted a copy. The listing agent wanted a copy of the contract. And I'm thinking, I would never ask for the entire inspection report, but they wanted it. So I asked my buyer, are you, they want a copy of the report, and they were fine with it. I mean, they could have asked the seller to pay for it because it actually belonged to them. But my buyers were generous and said, no, they can have a copy of it. Well, I sent them an email saying, per our conversation, you acknowledged that it was okay for me to send a copy of the inspection report. So I have it in writing. When they respond to that email, I'm going to print that email or save that email, because if anything ever happens, you got it in writing. Okay. When it comes to giving the buyers and the sellers time to respond to the contract, ask the listing agent for some guidance on that. If the people work at night and they don't get off until 3 o'clock in the morning, they're not going to be able to respond by 9 o'clock that night. So you may have a conversation with the listing agent to ask them, okay, when is a good, I'm going to present, I want a response within 24 hours. Is that going to be enough time? And of course, your buyers are going to be on pins and needles hounding you. They responded yet? Have they responded yet? Just tell them they've got until a certain time to respond, and respond and let them know. Any questions on, I'm going to go back to my, I want to share this.
Can I chime in another
Sure.
goof I learned from?
Sure.
I learn a lot from my mistakes. On a contract, what page am I looking at here? I'm looking at page 7 of 7. Underneath, whenever there's a rejection and a counter offer, underneath that box where the buyer is going to, where the seller is going to counter offer, in bold on line 365, that says all other terms and conditions shall remain the same. Here's what I learned.
What line are you talking about?
365.
I must have an old contract because mine don't have a 365.
Under the seller's response, rejection, and counter.
Okay.
This is just something I learned, and I want to pass this along to to the rest of our agents. Whatever is written in the contract above, if you do not address it in the counter offer, or if you do not address it if you do not specify some item about it, then anything above remains the same. So yep. If for example, if my buyer doesn't want to put down a good faith deposit, which they're not legally required to, and then in the response, the seller says, no, we want a $500 good faith deposit. And then if we counter, and if I do not address that line and we counter with something, some other, if we do not address the good faith deposit, then that line stays active. It stays a part of the contract. So just realize that if you do not address it, either yes or no, we will, we won't, then that line, all other terms and conditions shall remain the same. They are legally still part of the contract. Yes. And so that was something Harry Border helped me with. And fortunately, we were able to work through that wrinkle. But that was a big learning experience that made me bite a couple fingernails, but it worked out.
Because you didn't have commission breath. Yeah, that
newbie making mistakes, and I'm glad Harry Border and Brad Long were a phone call away.
Can you all see my screen where it says per Harry Borders?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
This is something that language that Harry has, some things that I put in the repair request. And I just happened to get this on my buyer's side. So while I'm talking about buyers. When you're asking the seller to do repairs, if the seller is going to do the repairs, you want them to, of course, use a contractor that is at least licensed or has some kind of insurance or has some kind of reputation, unless you know that they have the ability to do those repairs. And you may want to warn the seller, that the listing agent, that, oh, by the way, we're going to get a re-inspection, because the buyer has the right to do a re-inspection of the property to make sure that the repairs are done. Harry suggested that that the seller, that you put in the repair request, that the seller shall have the buyer's name appear on all invoices. I've gotten pushback from, matter of fact, it was, gosh, I can't think of the name. It is a big HVAC company. You see their ads everywhere, that refuse to put my buyer's name on the invoice, and is having a hard time for them to, get answers for work that they allegedly did. So wanted to share that with you. Has anybody done anything with escalation clauses to try to?
Yeah, I've done 2 offers with escalations.
Aren't they fun?
Me too.
No.
Too.
Okay. Does everybody see the screen?
No.
Nope.
Not yet.
One of my escalation clauses actually won the offer, and they only had to go $1,000 over. So we were, that one worked out, but the other one, the escalation clauses shot through the roof, and so we chose not to go forward.
And that's going to happen, and especially in the market that we're in, tell the buyer has that what their bottom line is. So know what their bottom line is going to be, and this has been an escalation clause that I have put in, worded by Harry, by the way. So it has been border approved. Because you don't want to go so far over that you think it's not going to appraise. Okay, any other questions about, let's see, escalation clauses?
No, hey, Marcia, real quick.
Yeah.
The previous document that you had, because I'm taking notes, because I want to ask you to send this to me later, that Harry said it was dated from 2016. What was that? So when I ask you for it later, I know what it was called. That email from Harry, it was dated, it was the one that we just saw before this.
I think it was the repair request.
Oh,
Was the
yeah,
repair-
that's what it was.
Putting the buyer's name on all the
The
repairs.
buyer's name, that's what it was.
And I don't know if you, yeah. Okay. All righty. And if y'all want any, let's see, I'm looking at the chat. Okay. All righty. Any other questions? Once you get through the contract with your buyer and everything is, I don't know about you all, but I like my contracts to win the first round. And if it's not going to win the first round, and I think there's things that the seller is not going to accept, I prepare my buyers beforehand. I let them make the decisions on, how much the price, the house, and I do a CMA for them so they can see what the values of homes are. And they're going to ask you, well, what should I offer? And I'm going to say, well, according to this data, between this price and this price. And they'll say, well, how much should I offer? And I'm going to say between this price and this price. What do you feel more comfortable with? And of course, they're going to go with the lower one, and that's fine. And if they go below that, I'm still going to write the offer, and I'm going to put in everything for them. And then I'm going to do a seller is really a seller's net sheet to let them see what they're actually offering. Because if your offer is 150, you ask for $5,000 in closing costs, and then you turn around and ask for a $500 home warranty. Well, your offer is not $150,000, and they got to understand that. So if you explain that to them, it's more, they see it a little bit differently. And I'll ask them, well, what do you want their bottom line to be? And we'll go up from there. I mean, that's a different strategy of getting them to a price. Now, there are investors, which is personally why I don't work with a lot of investors, because they just tend to want to lowball and waste your time. So, if you get a buyer that wants to offer, $100,000 on a $150,000 house, and you say, yeah, okay, I'm gonna present the offer, but let me tell you why it's not gonna make it. And you point out through the entire contract, okay, they're not going to accept this, they're not going to accept that. And then when it does come back and the seller doesn't accept those things that you told them, sometimes that's the smack in the face that they need. Or in some cases, they have to lose in order to learn the lesson. And they're going to get tired and they're going to get aggravated. You cannot get tired. You cannot get aggravated. This is your job. So, you just have to keep them focused and, and energized on the process. They're going to lose some and they may not lose some. You as the agent might be wrong in what you think the seller may accept. But do your homework before. Find out what they paid for the house, how long they've been in there. Is there any liens on the property? That kind of stuff. So that's the kind of stuff that you want to ask, have that information before you're writing an offer for the buyer. Now, are any questions about the buyer side? Because I'm getting ready to flip to the seller side, which again is not my favorite side, but.
Okay. I have a quick question.
Yes.
Going back all the way at the beginning of your buyer consultation, when they get a lender, and sorry, this is such a beginner question.
No question is a beginner question.
Are you seeing their what they got approved for? Or are you just taking their word?
Never. Never.
Never see their word or never see what they got approved for?
No, I always see what they're approved for. And
yeah,
I
sorry.
wish I was I asked to do to do this Ignite on the buyer side, because I'm all in with the buyer side, especially when it comes to that consult. When you're okay, just know that you are the engine driving this train, but you've got you have the conductor that is actually helping you steer it, which is your lender. And I tell my buyers, this is a team effort. And I'm the one that's making sure that all the pieces are together and that everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. Now, when you pick your lender, don't just pick a lender because they take you to lunch. Make them take you to lunch, the ones you pick, but don't just pick them because they take you to lunch.
You got to
Usually
date your lenders. Date your lenders. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm serious.
I know.
I have a select group of lenders that I work with. Generally speaking, the last one that I talked to that's now on my list, I interviewed her for 2 hours. She took me to lunch. I asked her all kinds of questions. How she wants me to give her leads, what she needs when I send her leads, how much, and I told her how much time I'm going to give her. Because when I give a lender a lead, I give the buyer the information, I give the lender the information, and I give each party 24 hours to get in contact with each other, one way or the other. I don't care who does what, but somebody better contact somebody within 24 hours. You train your lenders to do that. And they will, and I got one that if I give them a buyer, they're going to call them within 24, 48 hours. And I do give grace and mercy for weekends because, you know, I tell them I try not to worry them on weekends, but I want them to tell me what that buyer can do, whether they can, I want to know how much they can afford, how, if they've got money that they can put for down payment and closing costs. Even if they've got the money for closing costs, I don't want to spend their money if they don't have to. I need to know what type of loan. I need to know how much time it's going to take you to process their loan. And I want a pre-approval letter, not a pre-qualification letter, a pre-approval letter. And I want them to go over the loan products with the buyer. Because when I have my buyer's consult, one of the things I tell the buyer is, by the way, I'm sending you this buyer, this lender to talk to. When you talk to the lender, they're going to go over all kinds of stuff. You're going to select which loan you feel is that's best for you, or they're going to suggest one. Well, guess what? When I talk to you, I'm going to ask you what type of loan you're getting. If you cannot explain to me the not in detail, you just got to know something about your loan. If you cannot explain what type of loan you're getting, I'm sending you back to the lender. So my lenders know that. So my lenders, they don't come, the buyers know what type of loan they're getting because they know, first of all, I'm going to ask you before we start looking at properties. And the lender knows that you better educate my buyer or you're not getting any more business, because I'm not going to work with a buyer that don't know what they're doing. Because one of my greatest fears, and I used to see this way back in the day if I was on the listing side and a buyer would be signing all these papers and they're saying, well, I didn't know about this, or I didn't know about this term, or I didn't know about that. I can't have that, because I want my buyers to be successful and I want to be on the other end when they get ready to sell their house. Okay.
Marcia, can I add one thing?
Sure.
So when I was a brand new agent, it's so hard because you do have lenders literally popping out of the woodwork who want to be your friend. And I knew some lenders just because I do a lot of networking. And it's really hard to be very easily confused by everything they've got. But not all lenders are created equally. So if you have a sneaking suspicion that your buyers, if you're working with buyers, and they are going to need closing costs, or they're going to need help with a down payment, you need to know which lenders offer down payment assistance, because not all lenders offer that. So that's something to keep in mind.
Well, that would be KHC.
That's right.
They would need to be able to do KHC.
That's right, through KHC.
And you want to have lenders for different things.
That's right.
You want to have a lender that specializes in USDA.
Or know who doesn't.
And who doesn't.
Right.
And who do have renovation type loans that work well with that, or for clients that have really bad credit and they will work with them and get their credit up. I just added this last year, a lender that does VA loans. So you want to,
Do you run into more that they don't have a lender, so you're their person connecting them?
yes.
So like if by chance they were, yeah, I already got a lender, I'm pre-approved, then do you go the next step and ask for that information so you know what you're working with?
Oh, yes. As a
Okay.
matter of fact, if they tell me they're already pre-approved,
Yeah.
you definitely want to know, because you don't want to say, find out that they got pre-approved through Quicken Loans or somebody else,
Right.
or a bank that has a horrible reputation. So what I tell them that, okay, it's fine if you get pre-approved through your lender. That is perfectly fine. But I want to know who they are. I'm going to call them. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to tell them what I need. I want them to go over the buyer's net sheet with the buyer, because the buyers don't know what fees they're paying, or they don't know anything. All they know is how much their house payment is going to be. I wanted them to see everything. And if a lender is not going to do that, and I tell the buyers, if they don't do what I ask them to do, I'm going to be on you. And I don't have time for that. So that's why I want to use the lenders that I'm used to. But if they've got somebody, okay. But they're gonna wish they had taken my lender. Because like I said, I can't tell you how many lenders I have fired in my career.
No, that makes sense. I mean, with this all being so new, it's like, is that, obviously legal information to say, hey, I'm going to, call your lender because I need all this information to work for you to go find a house that's right for you.
Well, guess what? Can you really do your job if you don't know what type of loan they're getting? And the buyer can't even explain it? Because if the buyer can't even tell you what type of loan they're getting, then that means the lender hasn't explained to them.
Makes sense.
So you really want to talk to that lender and, for all intents and, it's a phrase, get in bed with that lender so that what they do. I mean, they could be, no offense to the newbies, but they could be new just like you. And don't be afraid of those new lenders. As a matter of fact, sometimes I prefer newer lenders, because you can train them the way you want them to be trained, and get them to do the things that you need them to do. But it's a two-way street. You've got to prepare your buyers to have everything that they need before they talk to that lender. Now, I need to get back to the seller's part. Any other questions? Because I could talk about the buyer side all day.
No, thank you. That was very helpful. I mean, being that newbie, not knowing, that even that step when you do a buyer consultation to talk about pre-approved and talking to the lender. So that was very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Now to the seller side. You have to prepare them too. And that is also your consult with the seller. You have to prepare them for what is about to happen, because all they know is you're going to sell their house and you're going to get them the highest price, and they're going to move and go on with their lives. Well, you've got to prepare them for all of that. And see, I'm going to my cheat sheet of all the stuff that I was going to go over with you all. Okay. So okay, I got my page up. Okay, once you're going to go over the contract with the seller in the same way. And I learned a trick from, I don't know who I learned it from, but they said to go through the contract backwards. And their logic for doing that was when a seller hears what the offer is, they don't think about nothing else. And really the same with the buyer. So you've got to get them to not focus so much on the price, because the terms are important as well. Okay. So with the seller, I go backwards on the contract. So I tell them, guess what? We got all these offers in and they're all great, even though there may be some that aren't so great. But we're going to look at each and every one of them step by step. We're going to look at how much time you got to respond. That's the first thing. Like I said, we're going backwards. Then we're going to look at the other provisions, line 297, to see all the things that they're really changing or the things that they're adding to the contract. The closing costs, who the closing attorney is. Are you okay with, and usually sellers don't care who closes it. But of course, remember, this is where I, as a buyer's agent, put in all my extra stuff. So you want the seller to see all of that stuff first. And if there's any addendums, if there's a delayed possession addendum or any other addendum that the buyer has included in the contract. Okay. The one big thing is when they have to give up possession. This is a conversation you want to have with your sellers before when you take the listing. How much time is it going to take you to get out? Because they're going to say, oh, we can get out really quickly. And they got stuff up to the rafters. When you take the listing, tell them to start packing. Take the personal pictures off the wall, because I'm taking pictures of your house. Go ahead, start packing. Put the stuff in the garage. I don't care where you put it. Get a storage bin. I mean, whatever. Prepare them for getting stuff taken out of their house. One of the things that I've done as a listing agent is, because I don't do open houses, not like everybody else does open houses, I do open house yard sales. So that is a way for them to get rid of their stuff, and I'm showing their house at the same time. So while they're doing the yard sale and getting rid of junk, I'm inside the house showing people through the, well, in the days pre-COVID, showing them the house, getting, their comments on the house. So that's one way of them getting rid of their junk before, so they can get moving quick. You want them to have a contingency plan just in case they get an offer and the buyer wants to move in quickly. Do they have a place to live? Are they going to rent? And if they don't, that's when you want to know that first, so that you can either put it in the comments that the seller needs 2 or 3 days after closing, or not, because you don't want to surprise the buyer when the buyer writes an offer and say, I want immediate possession. And the seller says, well, there's no way I can give immediate possession. So that is a sticking point. So you definitely want to make sure you go over that when you do your seller's consult, to discuss how they are going to be able to transition. You want to go over the closing date. And is that a good day? For sellers want to close on a Friday so that they can have the weekend to move. Well, guess what? Buyers do too. So if there is a date in the week that the seller wants to move, especially if they want 2 or 3 days possession, discuss that, and the condition of that the house has to be in prior to them, after they move out. It has to be in broom clean condition. You can't have a big gash in the wall, after you've moved something. You're going to have to fix it. That the house has to be in as good a shape or better once you leave. So if there's anything that does happen, you know, things happen when people are moving. You know, you didn't notice that big nasty stain in your hardwood floors until you move because you put a rug on it over the last 30 years. So, you know, make sure you had that conversation with your sellers. When it comes to inspections, let them know that we are looking at the big picture items. This is a great time when you taking the listing, to ask them, would you consider doing a pre-inspection? It's at their expense, but at least they will know the things that may need to be fixed prior to them getting an offer. It can work for and against you. With them getting an pre-inspection, the information on that inspection is now material fact. You got to disclose it, whether they repair it or not. And you have to have the disclosure to reflect what the condition of the house is. I personally like having them to do pre-inspections on just so that they will know what the condition of the house is. But generally speaking, a seller is not going to spend the money to get an inspection done on their house. But if they do choose to get one, that is a great marketing point that you can put in, saying, okay, this house has been pre-inspected. These are the things we found. These are the things we fixed. And a buyer may opt not to get an inspection because it's already been inspected and the seller has already done everything and everything is fixed. Let them know that these are hard dates as it pertains to the inspection, and that if they miss those inspection dates, you don't necessarily have to do anything if they come back later and say, I want these things done. But you may lose your buyer. But in this market, if you're, the buyer's agent is not going to let those dates slip. They're going to ask for an extension. They're going to do something. But for the most part, if the seller is willing to allow an extension, that's fine. But that is the seller's decision. And a lot of the things in these contracts, I want to point that out, is the buyer and the seller's decisions to make. We're just guiding them through this process and giving them advice and acknowledging some of the things that what they may have questions about. And just know we are not the experts on everything, especially when it comes to the construction or the condition of a house. So but if you see something in a house that that you're getting ready to list, point it out to those buyers, to the sellers, and say, hey, I see a stain in your ceiling. If that's not an active stain, active, leak, you may want to take care of that, because I'm telling you, if I was a buyer and I see that stain in the ceiling, I'm gonna think roof leak. So you're either going to need to paint it or investigate it to see if it is an active leak. And they might as well repair the big ticket items, because a buyer in this market may, they'll walk, even though there's a shortage of inventory, depending on what type of loan you're getting, the house may not pass, especially with USDA Direct. That's almost like a double inspection. And some loan products require that the lender sees the inspection report. Never, ever, ever, ever give the sellers, give the lender the inspection report unless they require it. And you want to warn your sellers of that, that you may get a buyer that has a requirement that the inspection report is seen by the lender, and that could kill your deal. Questions, gripes, complaints? Okay.
Marcia, I had wondered about your open house garage sale, yard sale. Does that work really well for you? How does that work?
It works very well for me, because I get a lot of junk taken out of that house, for one thing. And the stuff that's left over, I load up my car and tell them, hey, I'm taking, donate stuff to, charities and get them set up. Don't bring this stuff back in this house. Because, and you tell them, look at the stuff that's in your house. Do you really want to take this to your brand new house? No, get rid of it. For people that are downsizing, you want to tell them, if you've got, I'm guilty. I got my son's train set in my basement. No, I got it in my dining room, actually. I got his train set. I never even seen him play with it. I mean, because I'm his stepmom, mom by love. So I've never even seen him with this train set. He don't even want it. For some reason, I want it. I want it for him. I want it for his children or grandchildren. His daughter, he's got a daughter. He don't even have a son. So she don't even want it. But I want it. Don't ask me. So, but there are sentimental things like that. You may be, you may have to be the bad guy to say, hey, do you want this stuff in your house? You're moving to a smaller house. You're not going to have the room. Do you want to pay $150? Ugh, I got to do that now. That a month to store your junk for how many ever years? Get rid of it. And I say that, and I've got a storage facility that I'm paying $50, and I got to get rid of some stuff.
I have a client who was asking about possibly doing an estate sale because they moved into their parents' home and have been living there, and then they still have all of their parents' old, vintage things. But if they don't want to do an estate sale, then possibly doing a yard sale like this with an open house could be a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, and if they've got really nice, valuable things, you may want to consult an auctioneer or someone that specializes in liquidating. There are companies that specializes in liquidating properties, like that. So, that may be an option. But, I give the sellers a deadline. Hey, you're going to be moving. You got children. Tell them to come get their stuff. Because you're getting ready to move. So come get your stuff. You got 2 weeks. And of course, they're going to say, well, I don't want that junk. Well, guess what? Then out the door it goes.
Right. Super, super. Thank you.
Okay. Of course, you're going to, if anything changes as a result of that inspection report, the seller is going to have to update that property disclosure. So make sure that you are on top of that, because I see that all the time, especially when a property has been on the market and it goes under contract and then it falls through. If it falls through because of inspections or there's something that was discovered, you want to make sure you're the agent that makes, that handles that. Like I said, I'm going backwards in the contract. Where it says, talking about home warranty, I always put a home warranty on the listing anyway. So this is an opportunity for them to either say, yes, we were going to buy it anyway, since we've got it on our house for free, or not. I tell them that that the house has to appraise. If we sell the house for $100,000 and it only appraises for $195, are you willing to take that? I told you it was we should have listed it at $185, but we were lucky enough to get $200,000, but it may not appraise. So if it doesn't appraise, are you willing to take that risk? You also want to do, before when these offers come in, you want to do a net sheet for your seller. Now we get to the pricing and the finance part, which is the part that they're most interested in. And you tell them, what the offer was, if it was a strong offer. Because I work with a lot of buyers that are first-time home buyers, or need closing costs and prepaids, I have that conversation with the seller that says, you know what, your house is a perfect house for a first-time home buyer or someone that is downsizing, and they may ask for closing costs. Well, I hear this all the time from sellers that say, well, when I bought my house, no one paid my closing costs and prepaids. And I'll say, well, that's because they didn't have me as their agent. You didn't use me as your agent when you bought your house, because I would have gotten closing costs and prepaids for you. But if you get multiple offers, and I'm gonna try to share my screen, and I can't remember, I think I got this from Heidi 4. Okay. Does everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
This is a form if you get multiple offers, and it keeps you straight and them straight. And it's a seller net sheet that gives them exactly how much they're gonna, I think it'll have. Yeah. It gives them exactly how much they're going to net. Okay. So you're going to go over each and every offer with them, because they're going to want to know how much they're going to net, because that's all they're concerned with anyway. And you can put the names of them up here or not. It doesn't really matter. Some people just, want to just put the last name, and that's fine. What the property taxes are going to be, the cost for the attorney, and I know that's gone up, the commission for both sides. And in this case, which by the way, I have charged 7%, and this is based on a 7% commission. So I was given 3.5 and 3.5. Taxes, on this case, this person owed back taxes. You can get an idea of what their property taxes are going to be, and that's based on when they're going to close. And if the taxes, and I always just add the taxes in to give me a little bit of a cushion. In this case, this I don't know what the option 1 meant, but and it may be, they weren't going to ask for inspections at all. This was a conventional loan. They're going to close in 15 to 30 days. The total cost to the seller was going to be $15,000. If they didn't owe anything, then they were going to get $69,437 on an $85,000 house. The next one, I believe that's a conventional inspection in 10 days, 30 to 45 days in closing. So their closing cost was going to be $16,557. So they would net a little bit more. And I don't know why. Let's see. Yeah, because the asking price is more. And here's another buyer. Never mind. That's the same thing. These were identical. But in this case, the buyer is putting in $19,800 versus this buyer that's putting in $9,900. And remember, I was telling you that it's not always about the price. It could be the terms as well. So you want to look at the terms and break it down to the seller, because remember, the seller, all they're concerned with is that bottom line. But you want them to look at all the different things, all the different facets of the contract and the terms in their contract. Okay. Any questions about this? And this auto populates, by the way, when you put in the numbers. Okay. Any questions? Okay, I want to share this with you too. And I create one of these for my buyers and the sellers. Can everybody see that where it says contract to close checklist?
Yes.
Okay, I do this for my buyers and my sellers. This is just the seller's version. And this is to keep you on track. Everything goes right. The seller accepts, you're done, you're ready to go, but you gotta keep everything on track. Keep a checklist of all the different steps, whether you use a contract to close coordinator or not. Michelle Duncan is who I use, and it took me probably 2 years to let go and let her do stuff. But you want to make sure that all the parties have a copy of the contract. I normally send a letter to the seller, giving them the deadlines. I send it in writing, and I also email them. I give the checklist. I give Michelle does my green sheets for me. I make sure that it's pending in the MLS. I use Lion Desk as my CRM, so I just make sure that I put that in there and update everything. And I also set up a drip campaign for my sellers and buyers. You want, if you're having if you as the listing agent takes the earnest money, make sure you get it to the office within 3 days. That's very important. Make sure that the attorney, if you don't have a contract to close coordinator, make sure you have the contract going to the buyers, the attorneys, and the lender, because they have to get started. I send a seller the contract to close, a checklist that I give to them with a congratulation letter and a copy of the contract. I am still, well, they call it old school, but I like for the buyers and the sellers to have a hard copy of the contract in their hands. So I mail them a copy along with a congrats letter. You want to notify them when the seller, when the inspections are going to be there, when the inspections are going to happen, and that it's going to take 2 or 3 hours, depending on the size of the house, for the inspection to be done, and you still want them to leave the house. When the inspection is done, that's of course when you're going to go over the inspection itself, and that's another negotiating point. Again, if you've done your work on the front end, hopefully there's not going to be any big grand surprises to the seller. And if there are, of course, if you've got them covered by a home warranty, then a lot of their headaches are going to be covered if they weren't pre-existing things. There's going to be a termite inspection, and usually the inspections are done at the same time. But let them know that this is another negotiating time, that things could go awry, and we hope that they don't. But if they do, here it is. That the appraisal is going to come in, appraiser is going to come out, that they may need access to the house. They don't necessarily have to leave during an appraisal, but they might as well. And that they need to gather all their keys. You want to I give them a change of address forms with a checklist of all the things that they may need people they need to notify that they're going to have a change of address if they know where they're moving to. You as the listing agent want to check in with the buyer's agent to find out what the status is. 10 days after you've done after the inspection period, then 10 days later, then 15 days later, so that that you have that you're being updated so that you can update your seller. And if there's anything that's going wrong, that you can be, on top of it. I have known that some listing agents will contact the lender of the buyer, and generally speaking, they're not going to speak to you. But if they do, yay, because they may be able to give you a heads up if there's anything that's going on or anything that you may need to get. When, of course, we're scheduling the reminding them that they're going to do this, the buyer's going to do a walkthrough, and that the condition of the house, they need to have the house empty if it's going to be, and if not, make sure that if they're going to stay in the house after that, that they need to make sure that the house is going to be empty, so that when they do their final walkthrough, everything is okay. One of the biggest things that sellers forget is the garage door opener and other keys that they may have out. So make sure that they gather all the keys from everybody. And really, it doesn't matter, because on a buyer side, you're going to encourage your buyers to have the locks changed. I like to leave a note to the buyer inside the house. So, when they move in, they've got a greetings from me. Once we get the clear to close and the closing documents are there, you want to get that closing documents and go over it with the seller to make sure that the numbers fit and that they are aware of the cost that they have, because sellers don't realize they have closing costs as well, which is, of course, the attorney fees, they got to get their taxes and all of that kind of stuff. I usually will also write a thank you card to of course, to the seller and to the agent. Your reputation as a good agent is going to be dependent on how you treat the other agent. And for the most part, Keller Williams has an excellent reputation as being a helpful and supportive agents. So we want to make sure that other agents, they're appreciated, say thank you, appreciate your hard work, or, give them, credit for helping you to get this deal to the table. Did you all use your Ignite book, go through your Ignite book? Okay. Nobody? Okay, well, maybe I'm the only one. I want to make sure I briefly go through some things that I want to make sure that when I went through the Ignite book, to make sure that I mentioned. And one was to keep the tone of the conversation between you, whether you're representing the buyer or representing the seller, professional and positive, and never criticize the buyer, the seller, or the agent on an offer that is presented, because the offer is what it is. It may not be the offer that gets accepted, but you want to make sure that you accept every offer that comes in and look at it and review it, because I tell either both buyer and seller, you have 3 options: to accept, reject, and counter. We're not going to reject. We're not going to reject. We're going to either counter or accept. So if the offer is not acceptable to you, what can we do to make it better for you? Okay. There is a checklist in your Ignite book, and you can use that as a guide to make sure that you're doing all the different steps. And don't stress out if you forget one. You can always come back to it. Okay. Respond to every offer. And I just saw this on a webinar, and I know we're running out of time, but I'm hurrying up, I promise. That that if you get an offer, if you're the listing agent and you get an offer, have the seller, if they're rejecting it or countering it, especially if they're rejecting it in a multiple offer situation, have the seller to initial sign and date every page, and then have them on the last page to sign that they rejected it, because that is a courtesy to the buyer's agent to let them know that, yes, I did present your offer. The seller didn't accept it, but we saw every page, we saw everything. And I just thought that was a good way to handle it when you get a counter offer. Because sometimes you just get an email or a text message saying it wasn't accepted.
You don't get anything.
You don't get anything.
It's just
but
crickets.
It is crickets. But you could always ask the listing agent. My buyers need to know that their offer was seen and rejected. So if you would please, could you go the extra step and have them to, and be nice about it. Just be nice about it. Let's see. We talked about lowball offers. Sellers that don't want to make repairs. I just ran into this where a seller didn't want to make a repair. Okay, it is what it is, but just remind that seller that you may get another inspection, and if these same things come up again, you're going to have a hard choice to make. You're either going to have to repair it or lower your expectations of what you can get with your house. If you are working with a seller that is wanting to buy another house, that's a double dip for you. But make sure that they're in a position to move. You have to do the same thing. Get them pre-approved. Make sure they're in a position to buy that next house. Do they need every stinking dime out of the sale of their house to move into their next house? And if that's the case, they may want to, you may want to suggest that they wait a year or lower their expectations or the price point in the house that they're going to buy for the next one. So with sellers, like I said, it's a little bit more complicated, especially if you're working the buy side with them as well. All righty. This was supposed to be from 9 to 11, right? Yay, it's 11:08. Anybody else have any questions, gripes, or complaints? I am going to put my number in the chat box. If you all have any questions, want any of my stuff, you are more than welcome.
Marcia, this was great. I really enjoyed the session and learned so much. It was really helpful.
Thank you. Thank you. And just because you all are new, don't think that you all don't have anything to bring to the table. Believe me, your freshness, your newness, your attitude towards the business as a new agent, it really does encourage older agents that have been in the business. It reminds them of how it was, and it makes us think about, okay, I don't want to make this mistake. So I remember when this happened, or let me tell this new person this, or in my case, I've never sold a house over 500,000. So for me to sell $1 million house would be out of my element. Now, if you want to talk about selling farms, that's a different story. I'm there with you. But everybody has their niche or what they feel comfortable with. And you want to stretch yourself. I mean, like I said, I'm not a heavy listing agent. I do listings, but that's not the fun part for me. So right now, my focus is I'm looking at listings because I'm finding them for my buyers. So I'm just changing my mindset and how I look at it. So now I'm like, I got to find some listings for my babies. And try not to call them your babies. they don't all like that, and don't be a helicopter mom, as my granddaughter affectionately called me. But you know, my goal is when I put you in a house, you're staying in a house. Unless you want to sell it, which in that case, you want to make sure that you have something in place, that you're always communicating with them, even after the process. Does anybody do parties, or, well, I know people don't do parties anymore, but do anything for your buyers or sellers that you would like to share?
I always give welcome mats. It's inexpensive, but it's also cute. And then depending on what kind of people my buyers are, like, are they dog people? Are they little kid people, like they have little kids or whatever? Sometimes I try to find welcome mats that speak to, like, if it's a dog, like the dog, the O in home, like welcome home, the O might be like a dog print, or a, you know, just this is something I always do, give them a welcome mat. So.
Okay. Well, the last thing that I did for one of my buyers, I actually sold her house and she ended up buying, was I gave a party.
Nice.
That was so much fun. Oh my God. I got 30 people added to my database as a result. Names, addresses, phone numbers, and gave out door prizes so I confirmed their name, address, and phone numbers. So anything that you can do. I saw where somebody delivered balloons or something to somebody's job, congratulating them. And of course, then everybody that works at their job knows that they just bought a new house. Or, you know, even if, now I'm thinking about a sad occasion when I did sell a house and it was a older lady, and she cried at the closing because it was her, you know, the last house before she went into the nursing home. You know, and it is emotional. So bring Kleenex. You know, the buyers are extremely happy, and the sellers can be happy that they're moving, but they're, you know, moving on to another phase in their life. Alrighty. You cannot be crying, Shelley. Alrighty, well, if no one else have any questions, I'm getting ready to sign off here. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you all. And
Thank you so much, Marcia. It was awesome.
thank you, thank you. If you need anything, just holler. And if you don't
Thank
holler,
you.
that's your call.